like to pick up that conversation where we left it with the kids. You know, in the Gospel of Luke has his own way of writing, a little bit of background. Luke, we call him the great physician. We think maybe he was a doctor like that. And he writes from that perspective. He's got this wonderful sense of compassion. Okay, all of the things that you could think about when you see Jesus touching this beer and causing this young man to live again, we get caught up in the, oh my goodness, he's dead, but now he's alive. But what Luke really wants us to see is who has that power of life. It's Jesus that has that power of life. And it's Jesus that shows the compassion to this woman. Now this woman, he understood very well what that situation for her was. And this is a day and age when women didn't work. They didn't own property. They didn't engage in commerce like that. They didn't control wealth. That's why when you read in Acts where Paul goes to visit like Lydia, for instance, she's I believe Lydia was the dealer of purple cloth. She had a business. She was well-to-do. Now in the 21st century we think, oh yeah, cool, okay, she's a businesswoman. No, back then that was, wow! Lydia is doing something that women just don't do. And so Jesus has compassion on this woman. She has no means of support. There is no Social Security. There is no Veep, no food shelf. And what he does is the ultimate act of compassion. He gives her back her son, who is her means of support. You saw that in 1 Kings this morning. We heard Barth read about Elijah. Same situation. In fact, the woman was a little more pointed. What have you against me that now you're taking even him from me? My last means of support. You've brought me this far, and now you've taken it away. What Luke wants us to see this morning is Jesus' act of compassion. So get caught up in the fact that the dead are raised. Yeah, that's really cool. But the point for our lives today is this compassion. And I want to know how well you've prepared yourself to be compassionate today. How well have you prepared yourself to come to this place and to receive the gifts and the grace of God to go out into that world and to practice this compassion? It's tough. If you're like me, you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you've been working since 4:30 and you come to church, and sometimes, when you walk into church, things just boom, boom, crop up like this. Sometimes it's hard to be compassionate. This past week I have 2 wonderful daughters, and they're both in that age where they think they know everything and I know very little. And they recently got a replacement car for a car that was wrecked in an accident at their hands, I might add. Nobody was injured, no harm, no foul. But I get this call on my cell phone. Dad, are you busy? It's Thursday night. I'm going into a meeting. I'm walking in. Are you busy? I said, well, what's going on? It was Hannah, and she said, well, the car doesn't work. Well, what's going on? Well, the wheels are smoking. Well, okay. Well, why are the wheels smoking? Because the emergency brake's on. We'll take it off. I can't. It's stuck. What do you mean it's stuck? And I go on to find out that she'd been driving it with the emergency brake on, so right then, no compassion out of me, let me tell you. She said, well, I had to pick up my brother who was at home and he had to get to his soccer game. I had to get there. I said, well, what about that little light that says that brake is on? Did you not understand? She said, but I had to go. I said, well, you're there now. There's not much compassion. You see, I think what happens is we get caught up in the moment, and if we don't prepare ourselves for what's going to come, if you're like me, the first thing that you want to do is put them up. There's a little Italian in me somewhere that really loves a good scrape, and I might get a bloody nose out of the deal, but by golly, I'm going to give you one too. What Jesus teaches us is a different way. God prepares the world for the Son through the Old Testament by looking at the prophets. Isaiah is one of the best to read for that. I won't quote him. Jeremiah is another wonderful one. Malachi, terrific. God prepares the world and says, hey, there is a new way coming. You're not going to be judged anymore. You're not going to be found guilty. But you're going to be loved. And this is how I'm going to do it. And in the gospel, he tells the wonderful story of the Son who comes to give his life for a people who didn't deserve it, but whom God loved nonetheless. So I want to ask you again, how ready are you to go and be compassionate in your life this week? Coming into Bloomington the other night, I had the misfortune to drive through Rogers. Normally I like driving through Rogers. I see Cabela's and I see Northern Hydraulic, my two favorite stores in the world. And I say it's Northern Power. It's not Northern Hydraulic anymore, but Northern Power. But it's also road construction. And 3 lanes going eastbound went down to 2, went down to 1 very quickly. And myself, along with about 6 other cars, were dead stopped because all these other cars had been backed up for miles. They'd been going through Rogers for about 45 minutes, which is about 44 minutes longer than it normally takes. They were bumper to bumper. They weren't letting anybody in. And we sat there for a good 5 minutes until finally someone slowed down enough to let all of us wayward souls in. How ready are you to go and be compassionate today? To share the grace that's been given to you with somebody else. Just the very next night, I was in the grocery store, and I was kind of in a hurry. You're going from one place to the next, and I walked up in line. It looked like the shortest line, but it had the fullest baskets. And the lady, as she begins to put her heaped-up basket on the belt, she looks at my bread and my milk, and she says, she said, why don't you go ahead of me? Wow. How ready are you to go and be compassionate in this world? We need it. Oh, do we need it badly. And this is where we read it. This Gospel of Luke, the Gospel of John, the Gospel of Mark, the Gospel of Matthew. You can see it lived out in the New Testament. Acts of love. Acts of compassion. Maybe the dukes come up, but then the rational kicks in and says, oh, wait a minute, that's not who I am. So the hands come down. See, that's the true test, I think, of a Christian. Who's going to rule your heart? Who is going to rule your heart? If you let anger take hold, if you let anger grab your heart, it's going to get twisted into a bunch of ugly shapes. It's going to cause your hair to fall out. It's going to cause your blood pressure to go up. Ultimately, it's going to take your life and it's going to put you in the ground. And then on that last day when we're raised, I've got a hunch we're going to go meet our Maker, and our God is going to look at us and say, I love you. But you didn't get it. Today, Jesus calls us to get it. To be compassionate. Whether it means that we serve those who don't have the things that we have, or whether it means that we love those who perhaps aren't necessarily deserving of our love at that moment. Or maybe it is we look in the mirror and we decide that, I can be who Christ made me to be, and I need to forgive myself. Whatever it is, Jesus calls us to it. And He asks us, in the name of God, to have compassion for each other. Amen.